Good morning.
Well, it is morning here. I imagine it's not morning where you are.
No, it's evening. It's evening. Thank you for meeting with me.
What would you like to talk about, my dear?
I wanted to talk about 10,000 Buddhas.
Okay.
Remember the 10,000 Buddhas?
Not really.
Not really? You don't remember Osho talking about the 10,000?
Oh, the 10,000. Yeah. Best of luck.
All the sannyasins were going to wake up,
Yeah.
and there was going to be 10,000
Yeah.
Buddhas.
Best of luck with that.
Well, so the irony of the whole thing is that I woke up on the day Osho died. Because he had said everyone would wake up on the day that he died, right? Remember that?
Well, he said that he'd move into us. Yes.
Yeah, transmission of the lamp.
Yeah, that's right.
So the thing about, so I was living in a small town in Idaho, and I just, believed him. I was just like innocent, trusting. And so I woke up in the morning and heard that he had died. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, that means I'm already enlightened. It already happened in the middle of the night. And so I look inside, like, what's it like? Rather than waiting for something to happen. It's like, what's it like? And I look inside and I'm like, there I am, right? There was nothing there. And then I stepped back into me. Right? Yeah. So it was the whole not waiting thing that totally mattered.
For you?
Well, it has to be true for everyone, right?
No, it's not true for everyone. Enlightenment is an accident. It can't be forced. It can't be forced. It can't be obtained. It's an accident that occurs or does not occur. All a person can do is prepare the ground for that accident to occur.
Right.
And it is a surrendered mind that supports the accident.
Exactly. And trusting.
Well, trust and surrender are synonymous. But most of the sannyasins of Osho's weren't practicing. They were collecting information. They were information collectors. And so they failed.
And they were showing off with each other.
Well, that was the collecting knowledge and showing off.
Right.
Rather than actually practicing anything that led the mind to surrender, they were practicing competition on I know this and I know better than you. And of course, it doesn't work. The collection of knowledge doesn't help people raise their consciousness levels. It just makes them knowledgeable.
Right. Well, it doesn't even do that sometimes. You gotta wonder. So the thing about me though is that I wasn't at 𝐬𝐞𝐥𝐟, I wasn't at Pune, so I was just by myself, and I didn't have other sannyasins to talk to, and I think that was very, very helpful.
Very helpful. The only person that can help you when you're waking up is someone who's already awake. Someone who's not awake will probably lead you astray. Right.
Were you at 𝐬𝐞𝐥𝐟?
I was, yes. I was with Osho at the ranch in 84 and 85 for about 5 months each. And then in 89, I was in Pune with him for 5 months. And I got very sick, so I left in December, just a month before he passed.
Yeah.
I was there when Vivek died, and all the controversies around that. But I got very ill because I was eating food off the street vendors, and I ended up with all sorts of amoebas and you name it.
Oh my gosh.
But I was in mystery school for 5 months there, and I was in mystery school in Oregon for a total of 9 months, I think.
Well, so what was mystery school?
Well, that was Osho's groups that were run by different therapists like 𝐸𝐴 and Zareen and Vishrant. And I got involved quite heavily in the group side of it with those therapists.
So, so I'm living in this little town in Idaho, and I don't know the geography of the United States. You know, Oregon, the next state over towards the east is Idaho.
Yep.
So I'm like a 12-hour drive from 𝐬𝐞𝐥𝐟-𝐢𝐧𝐪. And so, of course, when 𝐬𝐞𝐥𝐟-𝐢𝐧𝐪 broke up, everyone was homeless, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so I'm in this little town in Idaho, and I own this little house. And I called up, did I call Oregon? I called somewhere because they were going to give away a whole bunch of books because they were getting rid of stuff because they didn't have anywhere to keep it. So I'm like, I'll take books. And this guy, Swami Yogino, answers the phone. And he's like, what? There's a sannyasins in Idaho? And he's like, I'm coming to visit you.
Mm.
And he jumps in his van and he comes to visit me. And here's what was really interesting is that he told me that he was part of an inner circle in 𝐬𝐴𝐽𝐿 of enlightened sannyasins who were meditating 24 hours a day and helping to maintain the Buddha field.
Uh-huh.
And of course I believed him. Like, why would I not believe him? And I still think it's true.
Well, Osho didn't need anyone to help him with his Buddha field. His Buddha field was permanent.
No, yes, but all the same, it kind of broadens the idea of participating in the Buddha field, like nothing's separate, right?
Well, the Buddha field is caused in a human being by awareness being aware of itself. That's aware of the mind becoming aware of itself and staying aware of itself. And Osho had that permanently, full time, 24 hours a day. The Buddha field was there because of awareness aware of itself in Osho. And that's the only way that you can really tell if someone's awake, is if they have that Buddha field 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what they're doing, then they're awake. That's because anyone can pretend to be holy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Yogino was not holy at all. And he never, well, I have to say, dropped it. He was just always himself. So I think, you know, I ended up living in the Buddha field. He stayed there, can't remember the years, but he was still there when Osho died.
Yeah.
And also there was another one of his friends who had been part of this circle who came, we were in this little tiny house all crammed in and living in Idaho because nobody wanted to get jobs, right?
Well, all you've got to do is dig potatoes out of the ground, I believe, in Idaho.
Right, right. We have a few other things we do.
I haven't heard of them.
And good, that's fine. We like the potatoes. But anyway, so yeah, so the Buddha field is I mean, it's always there, right? I mean, if a person is not aware of who they are, then there's just like a crust. I don't know if that's how you would describe it, that keeps that Buddha field from coming through.
Well, there's an absence of the Buddha field, because the Buddha field is produced by awareness being aware of itself continuously. It's like in the beginning, the awareness finds itself and there's a Buddha field. After a period of time, it seems to lock on like two permanent magnets connecting to each other, and then nothing can stop it.
Say that again?
Well, there's a lot of teachers out there at the moment who aren't fully awake. They're partially awake. They can sit and self-inquire and find beingness, and then they might hold satsang, but they go back to ego-based reality, because the awareness draws away from itself and back to the mind, because the mind has not been prepared for enlightenment yet. And this field of energy that is produced is there all the time if the person is fully awake. If they're not fully awake, it comes and goes. And I spoke to John de Ruyter about this 26 years ago, and he called these people half-baked enlightened. They were half-baked. That was his term for it. And I thought, well, that's interesting, John. Half-baked enlightened. But it seems that there's not much you can do, because there's another element involved in enlightenment, and it's karma. It's like if a person's karma is good, they get to hang out with people who are awake. If it's not good, they don't get that opportunity. And so all of the people that were close to Osho had very good karma because they were hanging out with a Buddha. And the people that didn't have such good karma. And the people that were very close to him had the best chance. Whether they took advantage of that best chance or not, I don't know. Because around Osho it was madhouse.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I wasn't there.
I was. I in '85, I was with him, and it was crazy in Oregon. And I had a journalist's license, and so I was there as a journalist, and I could talk to anyone and go to any space. So I investigated the whole scene, including interviewing Osho, and it was full on, man. It was full of bullshit. That's the basic.
Well, that's funny, because that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. Well, of course, the 10,000 Buddhas, right?
Yeah.
So I wake up expecting everyone else to do the same thing. And it was like nobody did.
No.
And it was, yeah, and it was so weird.
Yeah, well, he said he'd dissolve into his people. He said that he would dissolve into his people when his body passed.
Well, transmission of the lamp.
Transmission of the lamp, yeah.
Right, right. So, I still think we need 10,000 Buddhas.
I would agree. I don't think the planet has a chance unless consciousness rises. I think that the planet for human being habitation is doomed. In fact, if we don't raise our consciousness levels, because there's too much lower consciousness at work, which involves selfishness and greed.
Right, right. And you're talking about the craziness. There's still so much craziness going on, and there's spirituality everywhere, and everybody wants to be a spiritual teacher, and they're all out teaching each other weird, crazy things.
I would agree with that. There's a lot of people out there who shouldn't be teaching.
Yeah. 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 And so, but anyway, my actual quest is to find better and better and better ways to work with people.
It's difficult.
But it's really hard to find somebody who's actually prepped up enough to even start.
Yeah. So fortunately for me, before awakening, I was trained and working as a psychotherapist. And so I had a lot of experience under my belt in running groups, because I did 3 years of training in group therapy as a psychotherapist. And I worked as a psychotherapist for 10 years as a primal therapist. So I had all this understanding of how the mind worked and how it didn't work, and what worked and what was good under my belt. So when I started teaching, I first started with Advaita Vedanta, which was teaching self-inquiry to people, then became very aware that people weren't ready for self-inquiry because they hadn't done the work on their minds yet to actually create a mind that was equanimous. And so then my work headed more towards teaching people how to have equanimous minds, how to have equanimous minds so they could raise their consciousness levels.
Right.
And I've been doing that now for 26 years.
Yeah, yeah. And that, so many years ago, I discovered this thing called the Dances of Universal Peace. And what you do is you get in a circle and sing like actually really beautiful melodies and move together as one. And it was really interesting. The very first time I stepped into a circle was kind of in this chaotic situation, and the circle started moving, and boom, everybody just dropped into, I don't know, primal mind. I don't even know what to call it, but it just happens organically. It's like your DNA just wakes up. And so it's a really, really good way to start prepping people, because it's instead of trying to deal with people on an intellectual basis, you go boom, straight to the heart, right?
Unfortunately, the default patterns will keep you away from the heart, because we're not programmed to find heart. We're programmed to actually resist life. We're programmed to survive, which means resistance. And if we want to find heart, we've got to stop resisting.
Right, right. So, and that's so true, because in the groups that do this, it's like when the dance is going on, it's like, you know, and then as soon as the dance stops, it's just chaos.
Yeah, because they're back to their default patterning, which is resistance to life.
Right.
And this is why it's so difficult to teach people or to help people towards enlightenment, because we've all been programmed. We haven't been programmed for freedom. We haven't been programmed for love. We haven't even been programmed for happiness. We're actually programmed for competitiveness, which prepares us to join the army or the Air Force or the Navy. So you've got all this default patterning that's in the way.
Well, it's way more conflicting than that, because not only are we programmed for competitiveness, but we're programmed to be compliant, to be domesticated.
Authority. Well, that makes us good soldiers, you see. It builds an army for a country. And I think our education system is designed that way deliberately, because in the early 70s, I protested against the Vietnam War because I didn't agree with it. I couldn't see the communists coming down through Vietnam and taking Australia over. I thought it was a load of rubbish. And it turns out I was right with that. But we were brainwashed into believing that we had a real threat there. Now, at that time, critical thinking was taught at school. After that, they stopped teaching critical thinking. And so when it came to the Iraq War, there was very few protests. And that was another war that was really stupid. We had no right to be there.
Right. Well, yeah, hello, America, right?
Well, Australia was there too. Australia backed America, so we were there as well, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, the wars are crazy. But so actually being a woman is very different. So women aren't, I mean, we are trained to be competitive and to be compliant. But it's kind of in a totally different way, because what we're trained to do from birth is to manipulate men.
Which is, by the way, yang. And
Yes.
we think in terms of Taoism, we have yin and yang. And Yin is supposed to be the feminine way to go, but that's not how it is. All women on this planet are yang, as all men on this planet are yang as well. Someone who's awake is yin because they've become feminine. They've become receptive. They've become open.
Yes, yes. I find that I'm very unsuited to survive in hierarchy. It's the complication of it is so crazy that I can't.
Well, I was successful in business, but if I was with someone who was more successful or could teach me something, I became the student. I became compliant. And I was compliant with Osho because he was my master. And I was compliant with my mentors in business because they were better than me. But I have problems with authority as well.
Yeah. But that's different than just playing the hierarchy game. It's totally different. Like all my life, I've found really, really good teachers.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So instead of going into business like you, what I did, during the Vietnam War is I ran away from society and went and lived out in the woods.
You hippie, you.
And me hippie, I am a granola muffin. I still bake really good bread. And so I found really, really good teachers who taught me how to live way out in the woods.
Yep.
And so whenever I would find someone, I would never question. They would just always start teaching me. It's a beautiful thing about human beings. We really do care for each other if there's a little
we can do, but you must have come as a student. You see, when a person comes as a student, the teacher will teach them. If the person comes as a know-it-all, the person's not going to get taught. That's just how it is.
No. And people are, I think what you say is true, that you're taught in school because you have to answer the question as if you know it. Right?
Yeah.
And so I find, I'll talk to people and all they do is just spit back to me what they know.
Yep.
What they already know, which is really crazy in spiritual circles because everybody knows everything. They've read so many books.
Unfortunately, that's true. And that was the biggest downfall for sannyasins of Osho's, I think. They sat on their knowledge and rested in their knowledge rather than actually practicing anything that would take them to surrender.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing sometimes to talk to other sannyasins and find out what I heard him say compared to what they thought he was saying too. Yeah.
Well, he did tend to repeat himself over and over again.
Yeah. On a lot of really good points.
He
like
did.
Nothingness, right?
Well, everything's nothingness.
Exactly. So that's what was so funny. So, I hear he's dead and I'm like, oh, I'm enlightened. I'm going to look and see. And I look inside and there was nothing, right? And I'm like, oh, he actually meant nothing.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I had been turning nothing into something.
There is always the possibility that you already had that inside and you hadn't noticed it.
Oh, yeah.
Because
absolutely.
Because we're programmed to look for things that move and things that make noise. And beingness doesn't move or make noise, so it's quite often missed.
Right. And because I had spent so much time by myself out in the woods, I knew how to be silent.
Yeah.
And listen. Yeah.
Being silent is so important and it's so hard for people to do. They can't be silent and they can't be still. yet we find the beauty in silence and stillness.
Right, right. I remember, when you have weird goals, you mess everything up. So the very first time I moved out into the woods, I had this teepee, I go out, I'm sitting in a meadow all by myself. And I'm like, okay, here I am, living naturally in the woods. What now? And so I didn't even know that my mind was just like going and going and churning and churning and churning. And so then I'm like, okay, time to go to town and go get some food. And so I walk into town and I just start talking to people, and I was just motor mouthing, just going from subject to subject. Because in my own mind, I could follow the threads. And I just remember I'm talking to this guy, and I look at him, and his face was just like, oh, what is wrong with this person? And so I stopped and I saw my mind. And I was like, whoa, that thing's nuts. But it takes a lot of silence to
Well, it takes another thing as well. That's developing the silent witness that witnesses the mind without judgment, which is what Osho's main teaching was. And I developed that when I was 14 years old. A silent witness that watched my mind without judgment.
Right.
And that allows you to have detachment from the mind.
Right.
But it also gets to show you what a bullshitter you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You learn very intimately just, how nuts you are.
But that was found inside. That was found and in silence and stillness, because I was put in the tower at Aquinas because I'd been disruptive in the dormitories. So they put me in a tower by myself in a huge room, and it's black, and I was just laying in bed, kind of frightened of the dark, and I started witnessing my mind in the silence and in the stillness, and I was there for 2 years. And I developed this silent witness that actually just watched my mind.
Right. Yeah. So that was me and the teepee. Very, very similar, right? Difference is I had chosen.
Yeah, well, the fortunate part about it is it was up an extra flight of stairs, this tower, so they didn't check me at night time, which gave me the opportunity to sneak out at night as well and join the local boys at the barbecue stand under the Canning Bridge. And so I had another life, a night life with
two different people.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes me think, I remember that, so I have a very strange mother, and she loves logic. She studied logic like her whole life. And so when I was 7 years old, she decided I needed to learn logic. And so she made this little office under the stairs, and she would take me in there and give me logic lessons. And so what I learned was I can, through certain little rules, manage and change my mind. So if I can manage it, it's not me. Right? Yeah. Because I can take my mind and have it do this, or I can take my mind and have it do that.
Yeah,
So,
but you're still looking at a part of the ego that's doing that.
right. Well, I was 7.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of helped, set the seed for even recognizing Osho when I discovered him.
Yeah, well, I recognized him because he blew my mind away.
I know. I love your video.
Yeah, I sat in front of him and I was absolutely stuffed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so so there I was, being taught logic by my mom, right? Going to school, and I was really smart. And then I did a few drugs and decided to become a hippie. But I'm way out in the woods, and it did help me to be able to see truth from a lie, right?
Yeah.
That's important too.
Yeah.
And so the way I met Osho was a friend just brought over a cassette tape. And he gives me this cassette tape, and he's like, you should listen to this, you know? And so I put the cassette tape in and I listened to it. And Osho was talking about, you know, wisdom and knowledge and stuff like that that he loved to talk about. And of course, it made me mad because I thought I was so smart. And I'm sitting there listening to it, and it just enraged me. And I'm like arguing. And all of a sudden I stop and go, I am arguing with a cassette tape. So I was like, you know, it was just a huge gotcha. And I was like, this guy knows something I don't know. You know, and so now we're back to, remember we were talking about teachers just a little while ago? All of a sudden I was like, oh, this guy knows. There's something different about this guy than anyone I have ever heard. And so boom.
Agreed.
I just stopped. Yeah, I just stopped and I was in. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know what enlightenment was until I spoke to him. And then I went, oh no. Because I was on camera at the time and I had lost my mind in his presence.
Yeah. Yeah. He had that way. So, yeah, 10,000 Buddhas. It's like, come on, people.
Yeah, I understand the wish. When I first started holding satsang, I was hoping that a lot of people would wake up. But I discovered that in the last 26 years in Perth, West Australia, where I live, I'm the only one who's woken up. And these Advaita Vedanta teachers come and go, you know, all the time, but nobody's waking up. Because someone who wakes up, you find out pretty quick because they have a Buddha field and other people talk about it. But it's not happening. It's just not happening.
I totally agree with you that in a way it's an accident.
Yeah.
It's like you can't manufacture that moment.
No.
But I think that knowing that it exists has got to be tremendously helpful.
It is helpful to know because it fires up the thirst to do what's required to find it. It creates the right environment for the search, for the seeker. Without the thirst, without the thirst, there is no seeker, basically. And generally speaking, it's seekers that wake up, not Mr. and Mrs. Average out there doing their 9 to 5. It's people who have a quest for freedom, a quest for enlightenment, a quest for something greater, maybe a request for heart. But they're on a quest. They want to know. And they have a curious mind.
And courage.
Courage is required because you're stepping into the unknown. You're stepping into the emptiness. So courage is definitely required because the mind throws up fear when emptiness presents itself. It throws up fear to protect itself from the unknown.
Yeah, so I was, I'm putting together this, I'm a musician. And so, you know, I do like kirtans and I lead dances and stuff like that with people. And I was putting together this kirtan that I wanted to kind of energetically walk through my story. And so I was putting together this one song. So the meditation that I did was Nada Brahma. Remember that one? So you hum and you
I used to
Yeah.
run those at the Rajneesh Center in Fremantle. I used to run the Nada Brahma.
The Nada Brahma.
Yeah.
It's such good meditation because, well, it kind of gives you something to do so your mind's not going too crazy, right? But more than that, it's like the humming creates this vibration
Yep,
through your body.
it does.
And yeah, and so I was just kind of thinking, okay, I want to kind of reproduce this feeling in this song. And of course, in me, it just like, it just comes. And I was thinking the whole time that I was with Osho, the level of trust, I knew he couldn't hurt me because he was on purpose trying to destroy me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I had a similar understanding, but it was a bit later. I didn't work that out for a while later.
Right. I don't think I worked it out consciously. I don't think the words to describe that came through until I was sitting there putting the song together.
Well, he did say, I'm not your dear old uncle, I'm your murderer. He did say that.
Yeah. Well, I am pretty sure he used the words, I'm here to destroy you.
Well, that might have been another occasion, but he was really clear what he was there for.
Right, right. And so, yeah, so I was up for that, because I knew that something was wrong with the way my brain had been put together. Something was wrong with my conditionings. I just knew that ever since I was young, right? And so to have the opportunity to have that dissolved and destroyed was a wonderful thing.
I would agree. I had a different view of it because I think I was pretty conscious as a little boy. And I recognized that all the adults around me were idiots. And so I thought there was something wrong too, but not necessarily with me at that stage. I could see that the way people were living was wrong, the way they were thinking was wrong. It took more contemplation as I got older to see that I was the same, that I was also programmed badly.
Oh, right, right. That's a big leap right there, because we all want to think that I'm the good one. Right?
I always thought I was the bad one, actually. And that was reinforced by everyone telling me I was bad, so,
Right, right. I grew up Catholic as well. So
Lucky you.
I know. But it was so here's one quick silly story about being Catholic. The nun is teaching she's teaching you can't ever see God. And I'm like, why? I'm like in 4th grade. And I'm like, why? How can you say there's a God if I can't see God? I want to see God. And she's like, you can't see God, you can't see God. And
You're lucky you didn't get a beating for that.
so remember the Blues Brothers, where the nun lifts up off the floor and floats.
That's pretty.
So I swear she lifted up off the floor and she floated right down to my chair, and we're just like eyes. And she's like, you can't ever see God, because if you ever do, the sight is so horrible you can't ever look away. And I'm like, gotcha. And I just went quiet and didn't argue, because she had just admitted that she'd been lying. Someone has seen God or they wouldn't know that.
Right. Well, she was bullshitted too, because God is everything.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. That was Sister Ermina. Mean is name.
Mean, yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't have anything to do with the nuns. I had to do with the brothers, the Roman Catholic brothers and priests.
Oh, right. Girls and boys.
For 8 years.
Yeah. anyway, I mean, all together, it prepped me for where I needed to go, what I needed to do.
I hear that.
Yeah. So we need a totally different world, but that's not the one we're living in. So
No.
so yeah, anyway, I still think there's a switch that can get switched on in people, and I'm looking around for it.
Mm.
And so I did one time, I was doing an online thing with people, and I switched the switch on in one gal. And what I did was I like just talked and talked and talked and talked. I, told stories and scientific things and kind of dismantled their mind and dismantled their minds. And there's 4 people in the class. And then at the end I go, okay, now look inside and see if you can find a giraffe.
Mm.
And this gal looks in and finds nothing
Yeah.
and steps back into herself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a total accident. I had no idea that was going to happen. And she
Was a form of self-inquiry.
It is, well, it's kind of like dynamic meditation too, where I kind of just like bamboozled them and told all these stories. And
But asking them to
stuff.
step back inside, that's self-inquiry. And
Right.
self-inquiry works, whether it's done Zen practice or it's done Advaita Vedanta. It does work to take people into the emptiness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in Buddhism, there is a thing called first mind. I'm sure you've heard of it. No, called beginner's mind.
Yeah, that's right, beginner's mind. And I teach that all the time because it's a requirement. Always be a beginner, and that way consciousness can flow through you. That way consciousness can teach you. The moment you think you know, you're closed.
Right. I think first mind, in order for it to start, though, you have to actually recognize an enlightened person.
I would
Because
say
up to that
that's true.
point-
I'd say that's true because at school we're taught that we have to know.
Right. So you have to meet, just like me arguing with the cassette tape, right?
Mm.
I did, all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, there's something I don't know.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. Right? Right? And so, but people very firmly believe that enlightenment doesn't even exist.
That's true too. That's true also. Unless they sit in front of someone who's enlightened and lose their mind. And then they go,
Right.
what the heck?
What the heck?
Mm.
And then the journey begins.
Well, that's what happened to me with Osho. He blew my mind, and then the journey began because I wanted to sit on that mountaintop.
Right. I don't even know how I would describe it. What did I want? Yeah.
But after he died, I gave up my quest for enlightenment because I'd been trying very hard, and I decided to settle for something different, and that was the way of the heart. I settled for living the way of the heart. And to do that, I had to practice openness until I was perceiving love all the time. Because it's in openness that we perceive love. In closure, we don't. And so most people don't perceive much love because they're too closed, too defended for one reason or another. It just so happens that the very things you have to remove to perceive heart are the same things that are in the way for enlightenment. The same obstacles.
Right. So I would say that was actually the moment where you got it.
Yeah.
Right? So it did happen for you when he died.
Well, it happened before he died because I had satori's in 87,
Right.
a year and a half after interviewing him, and I found myself as the universe. And that really made me become a very strong seeker. But I think the problem was it was too much doing involved, me trying too hard. And I got in my
Right.
own way through trying. And
Got
by,
in your own way.
yeah, I got it. And when he died, I felt devastated because I felt that I'd lost my my master, and I'd lost my chance of enlightenment. So I settled for the way of the heart, to live the way of the heart.
Because you had to do it yourself then.
Well, I had to do it myself, but I also given up on enlightenment. I thought it was too hard, but I couldn't find a purpose in life. I couldn't find a meaning in life. So I gave myself a purpose, and that was the way of the heart. And then I went back to school and trained as a naturopath and psychotherapist so I could have some tools to help people with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I understand what you said about all the crazy things people do to try
Yeah.
to wake up.
Yeah, well, I did a lot of crazy things too, So, I bought a float tank, and I used to like taking LSD while I was in the float tank for 6 hours at a time, and playing Tibetan bowls through underwater speakers with a big pyramid over it. Man, I got into the weird stuff.
So, I wake up, right? I figure out who I am. I'm just like, oh. And so I was, for 3 days, I didn't say anything to anybody, Swami or or anybody, because I was so embarrassed about all the stuff that I'd done trying to find myself. It's like, oh, what was I doing? But now I look back and I'm like, I can't even remember what it was like to not know who I was. How can I not know who I was, who I am?
Well, the ego is a contraction. So if the contraction's not there, it's not there.
Right.
True openness is you without an ego, because the ego itself is a form of closure.
Pleasure?
Closure.
Closure.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
It takes closure to produce an ego. To be empty takes nothing.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. And so I remember, so I see who I am, and that thing, that contraction, that ego thing just fell off.
Uh-huh.
Right? And it's not like just one thing, it's full of a million different things. And they all went, thank you for coming home. Thank you for stepping in, and because now I can take care of them. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. My mind just stopped thinking. It was like it went to another room and I could still hear it. And then after another week, it just was gone. And I live basically in no mind most of the time. Even when talking to you, I'm not thinking. I'm just empty.
Yeah, but so I'm trying to think of a way to describe that, because people hold on to that thing so hard. And I don't like calling it ego, but it's really kind of the only word you can use, but it goes away and it can never attach again.
Well, that's the problem with
There's
the
nothing
ego.
to attach to.
It gets attached to things.
Right. But when there's nothing to attach to, it can't attach back.
I don't experience ego, so I don't know. And
I'm just remembering back.
I'm so happy with I don't know. It's not funny. I know it is hard work. I don't know is easy.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, yeah, so it would be really fun to lead dances with people who are at beginner's mind, at least, instead of the chaos.
Unfortunately, you've got to get them before they go to school, because once they go to school, they're forced to know, and they're forced to believe that they have to know. And that's where the problem begins in our schooling, because that's where the arrogance begins. I know. Arrogance. And when they don't really know, that's kind of stupidity.
And they don't believe that someone can actually know, because
Well,
everything's just like equal and
yeah.
yeah.
I have a lot of problems with people thinking they know when they don't know. And it's because of our schooling, the way we were trained at school to know and get the answers right and get rewarded for that and get punished for getting it wrong. And so you get a lot of people pretending to know, and this pretense to know, this level of arrogance causes so many problems.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Because it's hard to maintain a lie. It takes a lot of.
It takes energy to maintain a lie. It doesn't take any energy to maintain truth, because truth is
No.
Truth is nothingness.
Yeah, you don't have to maintain it.
No, you don't. That's right. You don't need to maintain emptiness. It's just the way it is. It's reality.
Yeah.
Mm.
Cool.
Mm.
Well, I'm still interested in the 10,000 Buddhas.
You keep
I'm
coming
very
back to that.
stubborn.
Oh no, you're wanting to help people. I can feel you. The problem,
Yeah.
I've been trying to help people now for 26 years. Actually, when we go back to my psychotherapy years, we're talking maybe 35 years altogether. And it's difficult. It is difficult because people are not programmed for freedom. They're programmed for imprisonment. They're programmed to suffer until they die.
And they're programmed to get dumber as they get older.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, because I've been doing this for what, 30 years as well. You know, I'm just in a different realm with music and
yeah.
movement and dance, but yeah, um, it's kind of sad because everybody's getting older and
Mm.
they're not.
Well, I've got a team now that that's just started doing algorithms and advertising on the internet. So we're going to get more of the videos on truth out, and that's my effort, to try to brighten up the world a little bit by telling the truth and getting enough people to listen to it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. Well, that's how I found you on
Mm.
the internet, right?
Yep.
You know, because I'm always looking for the 10,000 Buddhas.
Ah, yeah.
You just never know.
You never know. That's true. And when you never know, everything's cool. It's only when you think you know that you're lost.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I never
Or if
know.
you think you're doing something.
Mm. I think
So
we've nearly run out of time here because
I think we are out of time. So thank you so much for meeting with me. What a delight. Maybe one of these days I'll make it to Australia.
you'd be welcome. It's an adventure, and
Yes,
life's good for adventures.
yes, yes, yes.
What does Zareen mean? What does your name mean?
It is that bright orange color of the sun,
Oh yeah.
the hot burning. Yeah, so I'm Ma Prem Zareen.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah,
Swami Prem Vishrant. And Vishrant means relax, which is why they gave me the name.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not relaxed. So lots of people, they hear my name and, they're like, how do you pronounce it? And I say, well, it sounds just like Zareen, but
Yeah.
it has none of the connotations.
Ah, it's a nice name, Zareen.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, Zareen. It was lovely chatting with you, darling.
It was wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mm.
Bye-bye, darling.